Okay, in this video, we'll start working on our first small Elixir app, which is the terminal-based election vote counter app we discussed in the last couple of videos. We'll start by creating a new mix project, which is done in the terminal by keying mix new, followed by a name for the project. I'll name this project vote. Now, as you can see, the boilerplate of a mix project was created for us. Cool. I want to get rid of a couple of things that were auto-created for us, because we won't be using them. I'll get rid of the vote.ex file in the lib folder, and I'll get rid of the vote.test.exs file that's in the test folder. So I'll cd into our new vote folder, and I'll remove the vote file and the vote test file. Next, I'll create and open a new Elixir source file in my editor, Atom. The file I'll create will be in the lib folder, and I'll name it election.ex. Now let's create a module in this file named election, which, other than being capitalized, matches the name of the file we're in. There's a general convention of having the file and relative path name match your module name, which is what I did here. A bit later in the course, you'll see how we name modules that are nested in subfolders inside the lib folder. The next thing we'll do is create a struct for this module, and the struct will include a name, which I'll set to a string, and for now I'll just pre-populate it with the value of mayor. The reason I'm actually putting a value here is because it'll come in handy when we start writing some view functions in the near future. Next, I'll add a candidate key, and I'll default its value to be a list. I'd actually like to put some default values in this list as well, but let's hold off on this for a moment. The last key to our struct will be a counter that keeps track of the IDs assigned to candidates. I'll name it nextID, and I'll default it to the number 1. We may actually need more key value pairs in our struct, but this is good enough for now. We can always add more to the struct later. Let's take a look at the candidates key for a moment. In the last video, we decided that this list should contain candidates as structs. So let's do this. I'll create another source file named candidate. Then we'll create a new module in this file named candidate as well. Next, we'll create a new struct in this module that includes key value pairs for this data you see right here. First, I'll create an ID key, then I'll create a name key, and lastly, I'll create a votes key, and I'll set its default value to 0. Now, just for convenience, I'll create a function in this module named new, which will get passed an ID and a name, and it'll just return a new candidate struct where the ID and name are set to the values passed into the function. Let's head back over to the election file, and I'll add a couple of candidate structs to our candidate list using the new function I just created and passing in an ID of 1 and a name. Then I'll add another struct by calling new again, passing in the ID of 2 and another name. And since we use the ID numbers 1 and 2, I'll set the next ID to be the number 3. Again, the reason I'm adding this dummy data is so that when we start creating our view functions, we'll have some data to actually render in the terminal. Okay, I think we're done setting up the data we need, at least for now. In the next video, we'll start to create some functions that will transform this data into a view that looks like this.